She smiled as she tucked him in, kissed his forehead, and whispered goodnight, and by morning, he was gone. This is the true story of a mother who destroyed her own children, one by one, while the world called her perfect. Sarah Mitchell was the kind of mother every neighborhood admired, baking cookies for school fundraisers, volunteering at the local church, always with a warm smile and a kind word for everyone she met. Her home on Maple Street was picture perfect, with white shutters and a garden that bloomed year-round. She had 5 children: Emma, the oldest at 16, then Michael at 14, twins Sophie and James at 11, and little Lily, just 7 years old. To everyone who knew her, Sarah was devoted, selfless, tireless. But behind the closed doors of that beautiful house, something unspeakable was happening. It started with Emma. The girl had always been healthy, athletic, full of life. But suddenly, she began experiencing strange symptoms, severe stomach pains, vomiting, weakness that left her bedridden for days. Sarah took her to doctor after doctor, her face etched with worry, holding Emma's hand through every examination, every test. The doctors couldn't find anything wrong. Emma's condition worsened. She lost weight rapidly, her skin turned pale, her hair began falling out. Sarah was always there, always caring, bringing her meals, giving her medicine, stroking her hair as she cried from the pain. The community rallied around them, bringing casseroles and offering prayers. Then one October morning, Emma didn't wake up. She was 16 years old. The autopsy revealed organ failure, but the cause remained mysterious. The same symptoms: stomach pains, vomiting, unexplained weakness. Sarah's face showed panic this time, a mother terrified of losing another child. She took him to specialists in the city, demanded every test imaginable. The doctors were baffled. They admitted Michael to the hospital, ran extensive tests, found nothing conclusive. Sarah never left his side, sleeping in a chair beside his bed, feeding him, comforting him. The nurses called her a saint. Michael's condition deteriorated despite being in the hospital. But every time Sarah visited, and she visited constantly, he seemed to get worse. The medical staff attributed it to the stress of seeing his mother's worry, to the trauma of losing his sister. They sent him home with Sarah, recommending rest and a special diet. Sarah followed every instruction perfectly. She prepared all his meals herself, gave him his medications right on schedule, monitored him constantly. Michael grew weaker. 3 months after he first got sick, Michael died in his sleep. This time, the autopsy showed traces of something unusual in his system, but the levels were too low to be conclusive. The doctors suggested it might have been a reaction to one of his medications. An investigation was opened but quickly closed. There was no evidence of wrongdoing, only a heartbroken mother who had lost 2 children to unexplained illnesses. The town of Millbrook was in shock. How could this happen to one family? Margaret said nothing. What could she say? She was an old woman, and Sarah was a pillar of the community. Who would believe such a terrible thought? A year passed. The twins, Sophie and James, were now 12. They had grown quieter after losing their siblings, more withdrawn. Sarah kept them close, rarely letting them go to friends' houses, monitoring their every move. She said it was because she couldn't bear to lose them, that she needed to protect them. Everyone understood. Then Sophie started getting sick. The same symptoms, the same mysterious illness. Sarah's reaction was immediate and intense, rushing Sophie to doctors, demanding answers, crying that she couldn't lose another child. The medical community was now deeply concerned. 3 children in one family with similar unexplained illnesses? They admitted Sophie to the hospital and assigned a team of specialists. They tested for genetic disorders, environmental toxins, rare diseases. Nothing explained it. Sophie spent 3 weeks in the hospital. She seemed to stabilize, even improve slightly. The doctors considered keeping her there indefinitely for observation. But Sarah insisted on taking her home, argued that Sophie needed her own bed, her family, normalcy. She promised to follow every protocol to bring Sophie back immediately if symptoms worsened. Against their better judgment, the doctors agreed. Sophie went home on a Friday. By Monday, she was dead. She was 12 years old. Margaret Chin sat in her living room that Monday afternoon, staring out the window at the Mitchell house as the ambulance pulled away, lights flashing but no siren. There was no need for a siren. She thought about Emma, about Michael, now Sophie. 3 children dead. The same symptoms. Always worse at home. Always Sarah caring for them alone. Margaret thought about her years as a nurse, about a case she had read about decades ago. A mother who had made her children sick, who had poisoned them slowly while playing the devoted caretaker. Munchausen syndrome by proxy, they called it. A disorder where a caregiver, usually a mother, deliberately causes illness in someone under their care to gain attention and sympathy. Could Sarah Mitchell be capable of such evil? Margaret's hands shook as she picked up the phone. She called the police department, asked to speak to someone about the Mitchell family. The detective who took her call listened politely, but skeptically. Margaret Chin was 83 years old, lived alone, had no concrete evidence, just suspicions and a theory about a psychological disorder. The detective said they would look into it, but Margaret could hear the doubt in his voice. She hung up feeling foolish, wondering if her mind was playing tricks on her. But she couldn't let it go. That night, Margaret did something she had never done before. She went through her trash and recycling from the past few months, looking for the newspapers with articles about the Mitchell children. She spread them on her dining room table and read every word, taking notes, looking for patterns. Then she went to her computer and searched for information about Munchausen by proxy, about mothers who killed their children. The cases she found were chilling. Mothers who poisoned their children with common household products, with medications, with things that were hard to detect. Mothers who were nurses or had medical knowledge. Mothers who craved the attention and sympathy that came from having a sick child. Mothers who seemed perfect on the outside. It all fit. Margaret looked out her window at the Mitchell house. The lights were on. James and Lily were still alive. If she was right, they were in danger. If she was wrong, she was a paranoid old woman about to destroy an innocent woman's reputation. Margaret made a decision. The next morning, she called the detective again. This time, she didn't mention psychological disorders or theories. She simply said she had noticed Sarah always prepared the sick children's food separately, that no one else was allowed to help care for them, that the symptoms only occurred at home. She suggested they test the children's bodies again, specifically for common poisons that might have been missed. The detective was more interested this time. The department had been uncomfortable with 3 unexplained deaths in one family. They had closed the investigations, but the cases still bothered them. This time, they tested for everything, every poison, every toxin, every substance that could cause her symptoms. And they found it. Antifreeze. Small amounts, given over time, just enough to cause organ failure without being immediately obvious. It had been missed in the first autopsy because they hadn't been looking for it specifically. They exhumed Michael's body. Same thing. Emma's body. Same thing. Sarah Mitchell had been poisoning her children with antifreeze, probably mixed into their food or drinks. Small doses over weeks or months, causing the symptoms that made her the center of attention, the devoted mother caring for her sick children. When the attention started to fade, when the child started to recover or people started to lose interest, she increased the dose. And they died. The police moved quickly. They obtained a warrant and searched the Mitchell house while Sarah was out. In the garage, behind old paint cans and gardening supplies, they found a partially empty container of antifreeze. In Sarah's bedroom, hidden in a locked box, they found a journal. In it, Sarah had written about the attention she received when Emma got sick, how people finally noticed her, appreciated her, saw how hard she worked. She wrote about how empty she felt when Emma recovered slightly, how people stopped calling and visiting as much. She wrote about her decision to let Emma go so she wouldn't suffer anymore, but really, it was so Sarah could bask in the sympathy of losing a child. The journal entries about Michael, Sophie were similar. Each time, the initial illness brought waves of attention, concern, support. James and Lily were her next victims. Sarah had already started giving James small amounts of antifreeze. The police arrested Sarah Mitchell that afternoon as she picked up Lily from school. Lily had somehow been spared. Sarah's journal suggested she was saving her for last. The trial was a media sensation. The perfect mother who murdered her children. Sarah's defense tried to argue mental illness, said she hadn't meant to kill them, that she was sick and needed help. But the journal proved premeditation, showed clear awareness of what she was doing. The jury took 3 hours to convict her on 3 counts of first-degree murder and 2 counts of attempted murder. Sarah Mitchell was sentenced to life in prison without possibility of parole. Margaret Chun attended every day of the trial. She watched Sarah's face, looking for remorse, for humanity, for some sign of the mother she had thought Sarah was. She saw nothing but anger that she had been caught. After the verdict, reporters swarmed Margaret, calling her a hero for speaking up. Margaret refused all interviews. She didn't feel like a hero. 3 children were dead, 2 more were traumatized and orphaned, and she kept thinking about all the small signs she had seen but dismissed. James and Lily were placed with their father's relatives in another state. Therapy would help them process the unthinkable, that their mother, the person who should have protected them above all else, had killed their siblings and planned to kill them too. The house on Maple Street was sold. The new owners painted over the white shutters, tore out Sarah's perfect garden. Margaret Chin still lives across the street, but she never looks at that house without seeing Emma, Michael, and Sophie, 3 children whose trust was betrayed in the cruelest way possible, whose final moments were spent with the person they loved most, never knowing she was the one killing them.